There is a specific kind of silence that comes with owning things nobody knows you own. It is a quiet, powerful secret that I carry around like a hidden weapon. People usually judge you by your shoes or the car you drive. Today, my shoes were covered in drywall dust, and my car, a 15-year-old Ford pickup truck I affectionately call the Beast, sounded like it was coughing up a lung every time I started the engine. I parked the Beast in front of a half-finished luxury condo downtown. I stepped out, wiping a smudge of grease off my cheek. To the outside world, I was Morgan, the 34-year-old single mom who worked too hard, looked a bit rough around the edges, and probably struggled to pay her electric bill. And I liked it that way. "Hey, Morgan," one of the contractors yelled from the scaffolding. "Great call on that marble for the lobby. It looks like $1 million." I waved back, smiling. "That is because it is worth $1 million, Dave. Keep it clean." I climbed back into my truck and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to stick to my sweaty forehead. My overalls were stained with 3 different colors of paint. Wealth whispers, poverty screams, but real power? Real power wears work boots and doesn't give a damn what anyone thinks. My family, however, definitely gave a damn. They had no idea that MV Holdings, the company listed on the deed of this construction site and half a dozen other prime properties in the city, stood for Morgan Vance Holdings. To my mother, Sylvia, and my older brother, Brandon, I was just the scapegoat. The one who didn't marry rich. The one who liked to play in the dirt instead of getting a respectable office job. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was 3 in the afternoon. I had to pick up my kids, Lily and Sam, from school. My heart softened just thinking about them. Lily was 8, sharp as a tack and sensitive. Sam was 6, a ball of energy who loved dinosaurs and hated wearing socks. They were my world. And they were the only reason I still tolerated my family. I lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of the city. It looked average from the street, siding that needed a wash, a lawn that was more clover than grass. But inside? Inside, it was a fortress of smart technology and eco-friendly luxury. The heated floors, the chef's kitchen, the soundproof walls, it was my sanctuary. I built it myself, literally. But my mother never saw the craftsmanship. She only saw the small square footage and the old neighborhood. "You really should find a husband, Morgan," she had told me last Thanksgiving, looking around my living room with a sneer. "A woman your age shouldn't be struggling like this. Look at Brandon. He is looking at buying a Porsche." I had bitten my tongue then. Brandon wasn't buying a Porsche. Brandon was leasing a base model BMW he couldn't afford on a salary from a job he was about to lose. But in Sylvia's world, perception was reality. If it looked expensive, it was good. If it looked like work, it was bad. I started the Beast, the engine roaring to life. Today was going to be a test. I could feel it in my gut. I didn't know how big of a test it would be, but the text message I had received earlier that morning was burning a hole in my pocket. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. And it involved the one building in the city that meant more to me than any other. The text message from my mother had come in at 6 in the morning. That was Sylvia's style. She assumed everyone was awake and waiting for her commands. I pulled over to the side of the road near the school pickup line and read it again, just to make sure I hadn't hallucinated the audacity. It read, "Celebration tonight. Brandon has finally been promoted to regional director. This is a big deal, Morgan. Huge. We are hosting a gala at the Obsidian Tower Penthouse. 7 o'clock sharp. Formal attire only. Do not embarrass your brother with those rags you wear." I let out a short, dry laugh. The Obsidian Tower. Of all the places in the city, she had to pick that one. The Obsidian Tower was the crown jewel of the downtown skyline. 50 stories of black glass and steel. It was sleek, modern, and intimidating. It was also the first major project I had fully financed and designed after I broke away from the firm I used to contract for. The penthouse at the Obsidian wasn't just a rental space. It was my masterpiece. I had designed every inch of it, from the floating staircase to the infinity pool on the terrace that looked like it spilled right into the clouds. And my mother had rented it. I did some quick mental math. The rental fee for the Obsidian penthouse for a single evening event was $15,000. Plus a $5,000 security deposit. Plus catering. I knew for a fact Sylvia didn't have $20,000 lying around. Her retirement fund was modest, and she spent most of it on facials and trips to outlets. And Brandon? Brandon had been between successes for the last decade. This promotion was likely a lateral move to a job that paid slightly more than minimum wage but had a fancy title he could put on LinkedIn. She must have drained her savings for this. All for a show. All to prove to the world that the Vance family was elite. I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel. The irony was so thick I could taste it. My mother was paying $15,000 to rent my house, to throw a party I wasn't welcome at, to celebrate a brother who had never worked a hard day in his life. I remembered when we were kids. Brandon wanted a bike? He got the top-of-the-line racer. I wanted art supplies? I was told to get a paper route. When Brandon crashed his first car, Mom blamed the road conditions. When I got a flat tire, she told me I was careless. He was the golden child. I was the scapegoat. That dynamic hadn't changed in 30 years, it had just become more expensive. Another text buzzed. It was Sylvia again. I mean it, Morgan. No denim. No flannel. And make sure the kids are clean. I invited the board of directors. If you can't afford a dress, park around the back so no one sees that truck of yours. I typed back a simple response, we will be there. I could have told her then. I could have typed, Mom, I own the building. You are writing a check to my company. But I didn't. Why? Because she wouldn't have believed me. She would have laughed. She would have told me I was delusional, jealous of Brandon's success. Besides, I wanted to see this. I wanted to see how far she would go. The school bell rang, interrupting my dark thoughts. A flood of children poured out of the double doors. I spotted Lily first, her pink backpack bouncing as she ran. Sam was trailing behind her, holding a drawing. They climbed into the truck, bringing the smell of crayons and playground dust with them. Mommy! Sam yelled. Look! I drew a T-Rex eating a car. That is amazing, buddy, I said, twisting around to buckle him in. Listen, guys. We have to go to a party tonight. For Uncle Brandon. Lily's face fell immediately. The joy vanished from her eyes. Do we have to? She whispered. Yeah, honey. We have to. Grandma yells at us when we go to fancy places, Lily said, looking down at her sneakers. She says we touch things and make them sticky. My heart broke a little. 8 years old, and she already knew she was the second-class grandchild. Brandon didn't have kids, but if he did, Sylvia would probably coat them in gold leaf. She won't yell at you tonight, I promised, my voice hardening. I won't let her. We are just going to say congratulations, eat some cake, and come home. Okay? Can I wear my superhero cape? Sam asked. Not tonight, buddy. We have to dress up a little bit. I pulled the truck out into traffic. I needed to go home, shower off the construction dust, and find something that walked the line between respectable and I don't care about your opinion. I wasn't going to wear a ball gown. I wasn't going to play her game. But I was going to show up. And I had a feeling that tonight, the secrets I had been keeping were going to get very heavy. The drive to the city center usually took 40 minutes, but with the evening traffic, it was crawling. The sun was setting, casting long, orange shadows across the skyline. The obsidian tower stood out like a black dagger piercing the sky. Is that where we are going? Sam asked, pressing his nose against the window. The big black one? That is the one, I said. It looks like Darth Vader's house, Sam noted. I chuckled. It kind of does. But inside it is really nice. Lots of glass. We had stopped at home to change. I had showered and scrubbed the paint from under my fingernails until my skin was raw. I chose a pair of dark, tailored jeans, clean, no holes, and a crisp white silk blouse. I added a blazer that looked simple but cost more than Brandon's monthly rent. It was my version of armor. I dressed Sam in khaki pants and a polo shirt, and Lily wore her favorite navy blue dress with white tights. They looked adorable. They looked like children. But I knew Sylvia would find a flaw. She always did. Sam's hair is too long. Lily's shoes are scuffed. I prepared myself for the critique before we even arrived. Mom, I am nervous, Lily said from the back seat as we turned onto the main avenue. Her voice was small. Why, sweetie? Because Grandma said we embarrass her. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain calm. Lily, look at me in the mirror. She looked up, her big brown eyes wide with worry. You never embarrass me. Ever. You are smart, and kind, and wonderful. Grandma. Grandma cares about things that don't matter. She cares about fancy clothes and expensive cars. But those things aren't who you are. Okay? Okay, she whispered, though she didn't look convinced. We pulled up to the entrance of the Obsidian Tower. The valet area was bustling. Luxury cars were lined up, Mercedes, Lexus, a rented Bentley. The valet attendants were running back and forth in their red vests. When I pulled the beast up to the curb, the engine gave a loud rattle before dying. It stood out like a sore thumb amongst the polished steel and chrome of the other vehicles. A woman in a glittering silver dress standing near the entrance covered her nose and pointed at my truck, whispering to her husband. I ignored them. I opened the door and hopped out. A young valet attendant jogged over. It was Henry. I had hired Henry personally when the building opened 2 years ago. He was a good kid, working his way through engineering school. Good evening, ma'am, welcome to the— Henry stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. His eyes went wide. Ms. Vance? I mean, Ms. Morgan? He started to straighten up, his posture shifting from polite servant to respectful employee. He knew I owned the building. He knew the beast. He knew everything. I put a finger to my lips, giving him a sharp, significant look. Just Morgan tonight, Henry. I am here for the party in the penthouse. Henry was smart. He caught on immediately. He relaxed, but only slightly. Right. Of course. The private party on 50. He looked at my truck, then at the line of Ferraris behind me. Do you want me to keep it up front? Or take it to your spot? My spot was a private, heated garage in the basement with direct elevator access. Park it in the general lot, Henry, I said, handing him the keys. Don't treat me special. Just give me the regular ticket. Yes, ma'am. I mean, Morgan. He handed me a claim ticket. It is good to see you. The kids are getting big. Thanks, Henry. I ushered Lily and Sam toward the massive glass revolving doors. My stomach was churning, a mix of anxiety and adrenaline. I felt like a spy infiltrating enemy territory, except the enemy was my own mother, and the territory was my own building. Hold my hand, I told the kids. Chin up. We are just as good as anyone here. We stepped into the lobby. It was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling marble, a waterfall cascading down one wall, modern art that I had selected from local artists. But I couldn't enjoy it. Because standing by the private elevator bank, guarding the entrance like a troll under a bridge, was a sign with gold lettering, Vance Promotion Celebration, Penthouse Level, Invite Only. And beside the sign, pacing back and forth with a phone pressed to her ear, was Sylvia. She spotted us. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She lowered her phone, her eyes narrowing into slits as they locked onto my jeans. Here we go. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was the longest 45 seconds of my life. The Obsidian Tower possessed the fastest residential elevators in the state, smooth, silent, and ear-poppingly quick, but today, the ascent felt like a slow march to the gallows. I stood in the back corner of the cab, watching the floor numbers blur on the digital display. 30. 40. 45. My ears feel funny, Sam complained, rubbing the side of his head. Swallow, buddy, like you are drinking water, I said softly, adjusting his collar for the 10th time. It helps pop them. I looked at myself in the mirrored walls of the elevator. My reflection looked tired but defiant. The blouse was silk. The jeans were tailored. I looked like a modern woman, a working mom. But I knew that to Sylvia, I looked like a disappointment. I took a deep breath, inhaling the faint scent of jasmine air freshener that was pumped into the elevator shafts, a detail I had insisted on during construction to mask the smell of the hydraulic grease. The door slid open. We stepped out into the private vestibule. In the Obsidian Tower, the penthouse floor didn't have a hallway. The elevator opened into a small, elegant foyer with marble floors and a single set of massive, mahogany double doors that led into the apartment itself. Immediately, the sound hit us. Even through the heavy wood, I could hear the party. It was loud. The low hum of conversation, the clinking of expensive crystal, and the smooth notes of a live jazz band playing somewhere inside. It sounded warm. It sounded inviting. It sounded like a world we were explicitly excluded from. Is the party in there? Lily asked, pointing at the doors. Yes, honey. It sounds fancy, she whispered. I walked up to the doors. My hand hovered over the brass knocker. I had a key in my purse, the master key that could open any door in the building, but I couldn't use it. Not yet. I was playing the role of the guest. The poor relation. The dutiful daughter. My stomach twisted into a knot. I wasn't afraid of my mother, not really. I was afraid of what she would make me feel. I was afraid of that small, helpless feeling that always crept in whenever she looked at me with those judgmental eyes. It was a regression. Around her, I wasn't the CEO of MB Holdings. I was just Morgan, the mess-up. I knocked. 3 sharp raps. The noise inside didn't stop, but the handle turned. The door opened a crack, revealing a slice of warm, golden light. My mother's face appeared in the gap. She was beaming, her smile wide and plastered on, clearly expecting another wealthy guest or perhaps a business partner for Brandon. Welcome, we are so glad you, her voice cut off instantly when she saw me. The smile dropped from her face like it had been slapped off. Her eyes traveled down from my face to my silk blouse, paused with disdain at my denim jeans, and finally landed on Sam's sneakers. She didn't open the door wider. Instead, she stepped out into the vestibule with us and pulled the door shut behind her, cutting off the view of the party. The music became muffled again. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You invited us," I said, keeping my voice level. "We are here for the party. Happy promotion, by the way." Sylvia crossed her arms over her chest. She was wearing a floor-length gold sequined gown that looked like it cost more than my first car. Her hair was sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection. "I invited you to come respectably," she snapped. "I specifically said formal attire. Do you not know how to read, Morgan? Or do you just enjoy trying to humiliate me?" "These are nice clothes, Mom," I said, gesturing to my outfit. "This is a $300 blouse. The kids look great. We are just here to say hello." "You look like the help," she spat. "Actually, the catering staff is dressed better than you. They are in tuxedos. You look like you just crawled out of a dumpster." I came from work, I said, my patience starting to fray. I run a business, Mom. I work. You play in the dirt, she corrected. And I won't have you dragging that dirt into my son's night of triumph. Before I could respond, the handle turned again, and the door opened. Mom? Who is it? Is it the investors? Brandon stepped out. He looked polished. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him poorly around the shoulders, holding a glass of amber liquid that I recognized as the 25-year-old scotch I kept stocked in the Penthouse bar. A bottle that cost $400. He saw me and let out a snort of laughter. Oh. It is just Morgan. He took a sip of the scotch, leaning against the doorframe with a smug grin. Wow, sis. You really went all out, didn't you? Is that the new construction chic look? Hi, Brandon, I said coldly. Congratulations on the promotion. Thanks, he said, not bothering to look at me. He looked at the kids. Hey, Rugrats. Try not to break anything, okay? The furniture in there is Italian leather. It costs more than your mother's house. I felt a surge of anger so hot it almost made me dizzy. I bought that furniture, I wanted to scream. I picked it out in Milan 3 years ago. We are not going to break anything, Uncle Brandon, Lily said politely. She held out her hand. I made you a card. Brandon looked at the folded piece of construction paper in her hand like it was a used tissue. Yeah. Just put it on the table or something. I don't have pockets. He didn't take it. Lily's hand dropped to her side. Brandon, go back inside, Sylvia said, her eyes never leaving my face. Make sure the CEO has a drink. I will handle this. Don't take too long, Mom, Brandon said, turning back to the party. The appetizers are coming out. Caviar. You probably wouldn't like it, Morgan. It is an acquired taste. He slipped back inside, letting another blast of laughter and music escape before the heavy door clicked shut again. I stared at my mother. Are you serious? You are going to make a stand in the hallway? I am protecting my investment, Sylvia said. Do you have any idea how important tonight is? Brandon is meeting with the top executives. He is going to be a vice president in a year. We need to project an image of success. Of pedigree. She gestured vaguely at me. You project failure. A single mother, struggling to make ends meet, showing up in jeans? It begs questions I don't want to answer. Why is your daughter so poor, Sylvia? Why couldn't she find a husband? I don't want to have those conversations tonight. I am not poor, I said, my voice dropping an octave. And I am not a failure. I own my own home. I have my own company. A handyman business, she scoffed. Please. Spare me the delusions. Look, if you want to stay, you can go down to the lobby. I will have the caterers bring you down a plate of leftovers when we are done with the speeches. But you are not coming inside. My jaw dropped. You want me to wait in the lobby? Like a dog? I want you to be invisible, she said simply. That is the best thing you can do for this family right now. I looked down at Sam. He was gripping my leg, his eyes wide. He understood the tone, even if he didn't understand all the words. He knew he wasn't wanted. Mom, I said, giving her one last chance. A lifeline. These are your grandchildren. They drove 40 minutes to see you. They love you. Are you really going to kick them out because of what they are wearing? Sylvia looked at Sam, then at Lily. For a second, just a split second, I saw a flicker of hesitation. But then she looked down at her own sequin dress, and the mask slammed back into place. It is not just what they are wearing, Morgan, Sylvia said, her voice dripping with condescension. It is their behavior. They are wild. They are undisciplined. They are standing perfectly still, I argued. For now, she countered. But 5 minutes in there and they will be running around, screaming, touching the hors d'oeuvres with their germy hands. This is an adult party. Sophisticated people. We are talking about millions of dollars in deals being discussed in that room. Grandma? Sam whispered. He took a step forward, reaching out to touch the sparkly sequins on her dress. You look like a mermaid. It was a compliment. A sweet, innocent compliment from a 6-year-old boy. Sylvia reacted as if he had tried to wipe mud on her. She recoiled, stepping back sharply and swatting his hand away. Don't touch, she snapped. This is a $4,000 gown, Sam. Your hands are sticky. Sam froze. His lip trembled. Then, the dam broke. He burst into tears, burying his face in my thigh. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I just wanted to see. Great, Sylvia rolled her eyes. Now he is crying. See? This is exactly what I meant. Drama. Noise. I can't have this crying inside. It will ruin the ambience. I bent down and picked Sam up, hugging him tight. I could feel his little heart racing against my chest. I looked over at Lily. She wasn't crying, but she looked devastated. She had dropped the card she made for Brandon on the floor. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't a scream. It was a quiet, decisive fracture. The part of me that had spent 34 years trying to please this woman, trying to prove I was worthy of her love, finally broke off and died. I stood up straight, holding my crying son. You are right, Mom, I said. My voice was eerily calm. Sylvia looked relieved. Good. I am glad you finally see reason. Go down to the lobby. I will text you when. No, I interrupted. You are right that this party is for successful people only. Exactly, she nodded. And you are right that people who don't belong here should leave. Now you are getting it, she smiled, a cruel, victorious smile. Go on now. Take the elevator. I didn't move toward the elevator. I reached into my purse. What are you doing? Sylvia asked, frowning. I said go. I am not leaving, Mother, I said. You just told my children they aren't good enough to be in this apartment. You just physically pushed my son away. You just called me a failure. Because you are, she hissed, looking nervously at the door, afraid someone would hear. Lower your voice. I am done lowering my voice, I said. You wanted a display of wealth? You wanted to see who really holds the power in this family? You are talking nonsense, Sylvia waved her hand dismissively. You are embarrassing yourself. Leave before I call security. Oh, please do, I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. Call security. Ask for Henry. He is on duty. I don't know who Henry is, and I don't care, she spat. Last chance, Morgan. Get out, or I will make sure you are cut out of the will completely. The will? I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. Mom, you don't have anything to leave me. You spent your last dime renting this place to impress strangers. Her face went pale. How dare you? But you missed one tiny detail, I continued, my fingers closing around the cold metal of the titanium keycard in my bag. You were so busy trying to look rich, you forgot to check who you were renting from. What are you talking about? She took a step back, unsettled by the shift in my demeanor. I am talking about ownership, Mom. Real ownership. Not a rented tuxedo. Not a leased car. Not a rented penthouse for one night. I pulled the black card out. Morgan, put that away, she warned, though her voice wavered. Stop acting crazy. If we leave, everyone leaves, I said. And then, I turned to the security panel on the wall. If you are enjoying this story so far and can't wait to see the mother's reaction, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments, which city are you watching from? Every comment helps this video reach more people. Thank you so much. Sylvia stared at the sleek, black rectangle in my hand. It didn't look like a normal key, and it certainly didn't look like a credit card. It was made of heavy titanium, matte black, with no numbers, just a small, subtle logo embossed in gloss black ink. "MB, what is that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a nervous choke. "A library card? Are you going to read us a story, Morgan?" "Put it away." "I am going to read you something, Mom," I said softly. "But it isn't a story. It is the rules." I turned to the security panel mounted on the marble wall next to the door. It was a high-tech interface, a black glass screen that usually required a 6-digit code for entry. "You can't guess the code," Sylvia scoffed, regaining some of her composure. "Brandon said it himself. It is his birthday." "You really are pathetic, trying to." I didn't type a code. I simply pressed the titanium card against the center of the screen. The sound wasn't the harsh buzzer of a rejection. It was a melodic, ascending chime. The black screen instantly flashed bright green. A robotic, yet pleasant female voice echoed through the small vestibule. "Master override accepted. Welcome home, Ms. Vance. Security systems disarmed." Sylvia froze. Her mouth hung open, her eyes darting from the panel to me. Then, the heavy mahogany doors, the ones she had just pulled shut to hide us, clicked loudly. The automatic hinges engaged, and the door swung open slowly, grandly, revealing the party inside. The music was still playing. The guests were still chatting. But the barrier was gone. What did you do?" Sylvia whispered. She looked terrified, as if I had just performed a magic trick. "How did you do that?" "I didn't hack it, Mom," I said, putting the card back in my pocket. "I built it." I stepped past her. She was too stunned to block me this time. I walked right into the foyer of the penthouse, my heels clicking sharply on the imported Italian tile. "Morgan, stop." Brandon's voice rang out from the living room. He had seen the doors open and assumed his mother had come back in. When he saw me walking in, still holding Sam, with Lily trailing behind me, his face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Mom," he shouted, ignoring me and looking at Sylvia in the doorway. "I told you to get rid of them. My boss is right there. This is embarrassing." Sylvia stumbled into the room after me, looking pale and ghostly. I couldn't, the door. "I don't care about the door," Brandon hissed. He marched toward me, puffing out his chest. "Okay, Morgan. Fun is over. You are trespassing. Get out before I physically throw you out." I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. He was sweating in his rental tuxedo. He looked small. "Trespassing?" I repeated, raising my voice just enough so that the nearby guests turned to look. "That is an interesting word, Brandon. Do you know the legal definition of trespassing?" "Get out," he yelled, reaching for my arm. I sidestepped him easily. Trespassing is entering or remaining on a property without the owner's consent. So, technically, you are the one trespassing right now. "I am the renter," he screamed. "Mom paid the deposit. That makes it my house for the night." "Actually," I said, walking further into the room, toward the center where the crowd was thickest. "That makes you a tenant. And tenants can be evicted." The commotion had finally attracted the attention of the entire room. The jazz band trailed off into an awkward silence. The saxophonist lowered his instrument, looking confused. 50 people, men in expensive suits, women in cocktail dresses, were staring at us. I saw a few faces I recognized. There was Mr. Henderson, the CEO of the bank where Brandon worked as a mid-level manager. There was a local councilman. These were people who mattered. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption," I said. My voice was projected clearly, a skill I had learned from shouting over jackhammers at construction sites. "Who is this?" Mr. Henderson asked, stepping forward with a frown. He looked at Brandon. Brandon, is this your wife? No. Brandon shouted, panic rising in his voice. She is nobody. She is just my crazy sister. She is leaving right now. Security. He looked around for a security guard, but there were none inside the unit. The building security was downstairs. I am not nobody, I said, looking Mr. Henderson in the eye. My name is Morgan Vance. And I am the owner of this building. A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. She is lying. Sylvia shrieked from the doorway. She rushed forward, grabbing a glass of wine from a waiter's tray and downing half of it in one gulp. She is a liar. She is poor. She drives a 15-year-old truck. She cleans houses for a living. I build houses, mother, I corrected her. And I own this one. Specifically, I own MV Holdings, the LLC listed on your rental agreement. I saw the recognition hit Mr. Henderson's face. MV Holdings. Morgan Vance. He looked from me to Brandon, then back to me. I know that company. We financed your development in the North End. That is correct, sir, I nodded. Brandon looked like he was going to be sick. No, that is impossible. You can't afford this. You wear overalls. I wear overalls because I work, Brandon, I said coldly. Something you might want to try someday. I walked over to the nearest table and picked up a silver spoon. I didn't tap a glass, I just held it up, commanding attention. I have a strict policy in my properties, I addressed the room. The good neighbor clause. It is in the contract every tenant signs. It prohibits harassment, discrimination, and disorderly conduct. I turned to point at Sylvia, who was now trembling, clutching the back of a sofa for support. 5 minutes ago, the tenants of this unit, Sylvia and Brandon Vance, physically blocked my children from entering. They called them broken. They called them filthy. They told my 6-year-old son he wasn't good enough to breathe this air because of his clothes. The crowd gasped. Several women looked at Sam, who was still clinging to my leg, his eyes red from crying. The sympathy in the room shifted instantly. That is a lie. Brandon yelled. We didn't say that. We have cameras, Brandon, I said, pointing to the discreet black dome in the corner of the ceiling. The hallway. The foyer. It is all recorded. Audio and video. I pulled out my phone. In fact, I can play it on the big screen right now if you want to dispute it. Brandon shut his mouth so fast I heard his teeth click. I didn't think so, I said. So, here's what is going to happen. I tapped the screen of my phone. The massive 80-inch television mounted above the fireplace, which had been displaying a slideshow of Brandon's achievements, mostly photos of him golfing, flickered. It changed to display the MV Holdings interface. Live footage of the party appeared on the screen. Then, I pulled up the digital lease agreement. This is the rental contract, I said, scrolling to clause 14. Termination for cause. The landlord reserves the right to terminate the event immediately if the tenant engages in abusive behavior towards staff, guests, or owners. I looked at Sylvia. You called the owner a failure. You told the owner to eat leftovers in the lobby. Morgan, please, Sylvia whispered. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by pure terror. Don't do this. Not in front of everyone. We can talk about this. We are done talking, I said. The lease is terminated. Effective immediately. I looked at the guests. I am sorry to ruin your evening, everyone. But this party is over. You are all guests of an unauthorized tenant. I have to ask you to vacate the premises. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, Mr. Henderson set his glass down on a coaster. Well, he said, adjusting his tie. This is illuminating. He looked at Brandon with a look of pure disappointment. Brandon, we talk a lot about character at the firm. I think I have seen enough of yours tonight. Sir, wait. Brandon pleaded, grabbing Mr. Henderson's sleeve. She is making it up. She is jealous. Mr. Henderson shook him off. She owns the building, son. You don't get much more successful than that. Good night. He walked toward the door. That broke the dam. The other guests, not wanting to be associated with a public eviction or a family scandal, started grabbing their purses and coats. The room emptied rapidly. No. Wait. Don't go. We have cake. Sylvia cried out, running after a group of her book club friends. They ignored her, averting their eyes as they rushed to the elevator. Within 3 minutes, the penthouse was empty. The jazz band had packed up their instruments in record time and fled, probably afraid they wouldn't get paid. It was just me, the kids, Sylvia, and Brandon. The silence was heavier than the noise had been. You ruined it, Brandon whispered, sinking onto the leather sofa. He put his head in his hands. My career. My reputation. You burned it all down. You handed me the match, Brandon, I said. How could you? Sylvia sobbed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. I am your mother. How could you humiliate me like this? Humiliation? I asked, stepping closer to her. You want to talk about humiliation? You made my daughter feel like garbage because she wasn't wearing a designer dress. You made my son cry because he wanted to hug you. You did that. Not me. I checked my watch. You have 25 minutes to clean up this mess and get out, I said coldly. If you are not out of the building by 8:30, I am calling the police and pressing charges for trespassing. And Mom? If you take so much as a single crystal glass, I will sue you for theft. Where are we supposed to go? Sylvia wailed. We have the place until midnight. Go to the lobby, I said, echoing her words from earlier. Maybe Henry will let you wait there. I turned to the kids. Come on, guys. Let's go get some pizza. Real pizza. Not caviar. I walked toward the door, my head held high. I didn't look back, but I could hear Brandon sobbing into his hands and Sylvia screaming at him to do something. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. We didn't go far. In fact, we didn't leave the building at all. I took the kids down the service elevator to the ground floor, ordered 3 large pepperoni pizzas from the best place in town, and then took them right back up to the penthouse once the 25-minute deadline had passed. The cleaning crew, whom I had on speed dial, arrived within 10 minutes to sanitize the space. I tipped them double to work around us. While Lily and Sam sat on the plush velvet rug in the living room, happily eating pizza and watching cartoons on the massive 80-inch screen, I sat in the kitchen with my iPad, watching a different kind of show. I had pulled up the security feed from the lobby. It was 8:45 in the evening. Sylvia and Brandon were supposed to be gone. They were not gone. On the screen, I saw them standing at the front desk, screaming at Henry. The audio was crisp. I demand to speak to the manager. Sylvia was shrieking. She looked disheveled. Her hair was coming undone, and she was holding her heels in her hand, standing barefoot on the cold marble floor. My daughter stole my venue. I paid for this night. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Henry said calmly, though I could see him inching his hand toward the panic button under the desk. The owner has revoked your access. You need to vacate the property. I am not leaving until I get my $5,000 deposit back. Sylvia slammed her hand on the counter. Brandon was pacing behind her, furiously typing on his phone. He looked up and kicked a decorative planter. This is illegal. You can't just kick us out. I know people. Sir, stop kicking the furniture, Henry warned. I will kick whatever I want. Brandon yelled. To prove his point, he grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the side table, a vase I had picked out specifically for its light-refracting properties, and hurled it across the lobby. It shattered against the wall with a spectacular crash. "That is it," Henry said. He picked up the phone. "I am calling the police." I watched from the safety of my kitchen, taking a bite of pizza. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. They were digging their own graves, shovel by shovel. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers walked into the frame. "What seems to be the problem here?" one officer asked. "These people are refusing to leave and have destroyed property," Henry explained, pointing to the shattered glass. "She stole my party," Sylvia wailed, pointing up at the ceiling. "My daughter. She is a thief. Arrest her." The officer looked at Sylvia, then at the broken glass. "Ma'am, did you break that vase?" "My son did, but only because he was provoked," Sylvia argued. "It is self-defense." "Breaking a vase is not self-defense, ma'am," the officer said tiredly. "Okay, folks. You are trespassing. The owner wants you gone. And now, we are looking at disorderly conduct and destruction of property. You can't arrest me," Brandon shouted as the officer reached for his arm. "I am a regional director." "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," the officer replied, unimpressed by his title. I watched as my mother and brother were handcuffed and led out of the building, screaming obscenities the whole way. I felt a twinge of sadness, not for them, but for the little girl inside me who had once thought these people were gods. They weren't gods. They were just sad, angry people who couldn't handle hearing the word no. I turned off the iPad. Sam looked up from his pizza, cheese stretching from his mouth. "Mommy, is Grandma coming back?" "No, baby," I said, smoothing his hair. "Grandma is in a timeout. A very long timeout." The peace didn't last long. The next morning, the digital assault began. In psychology, there is a term for people who do the dirty work of a narcissist: flying monkeys. Like the Witch and the Wizard of Oz, the narcissist sends them out to attack anyone who dares to stand up to them. My phone started buzzing at 6 in the morning and didn't stop. Ping. "Aunt Linda, Morgan, I heard what you did." "How could you?" "Your mother is devastated. She says you stole her retirement money and threw her out on the street." Ping. "Cousin Kyle, way to ruin Brandon's big night. You were always jealous of him, but this is a new low. You need to apologize and pay them back." Ping. "Unknown number, you are a terrible daughter. I hope your kids never treat you the way you treated Sylvia." I scrolled through the messages, sipping my coffee. Sylvia had been busy. She must have spent the night spinning a sob story to anyone who would listen. According to her version of events, I had probably ambushed them, stolen the deed to the house, and cackled while kicking puppies. Then, I saw the Facebook post. Sylvia had posted a long, rambling status update. It had over 50 likes and 20 sympathetic comments. "Heartbroken today. My own daughter, whom I have supported and loved unconditionally, sabotaged my son's promotion party. She used a legal loophole to kick us out into the cold because she was jealous of his success. I am now out thousands of dollars and humiliated. Please pray for our family during this betrayal." I felt the anger rise again. Supported? Loved unconditionally? The audacity was breathtaking. I could have ignored it. I could have taken the high road. But the high road was lonely, and frankly, I was done walking it. I opened the folder on my phone labeled Security Footage. I selected 3 clips. Clip 1, Sylvia at the door, blocking Sam and saying, "You look like the help. Go wait in the lobby." Clip 2, Sylvia pushing Sam away and yelling, "Don't touch me. Your hands are sticky." Clip 3, Brandon screaming, "Get out before I physically throw you out," followed by me revealing the ownership. I didn't write a long, emotional caption. I didn't need to explain myself. The evidence spoke for itself. I posted the videos directly to my timeline, tagging Sylvia and Brandon. I added a simple caption: "Since we are sharing stories, here is the unedited footage of why the tenants were asked to leave." I don't tolerate anyone bullying children in my properties. Even if the bully is their grandmother. I hit post. The reaction was immediate. Within 10 minutes, the comments on Sylvia's post stopped. Then, they started disappearing. People were deleting their sympathetic messages. My phone started buzzing again, but the tone had changed. Ping. Aunt Linda, oh my God, Morgan. I just saw the video. I had no idea she said that to Sam. That is horrible. Ping. Cousin Kyle, dude, did she really call them the help? Sorry I snapped at you. That is messed up. Ping. Brandon's ex-girlfriend, sharing this everywhere. You go, girl. I watched as the tide turned. The court of public opinion had ruled, and the verdict was guilty. Sylvia tried to delete her post, but it was too late. Screenshots were already circulating. She went silent. No more texts. No more posts. The flying monkeys had retreated to the trees. But I knew this wasn't over. Sylvia wouldn't give up that easily. She would come for my money. She always did. 3 days later, I was sitting in the office of my attorney, Mr. Paxson. Paxson was a shark in a $3,000 suit. He had handled all my business contracts for MB Holdings, and he terrified most people just by clearing his throat. So, Paxson said, sliding a thick envelope across the mahogany desk. Your mother has retained counsel. Let me guess, I said, picking up the letter. Gary from the strip mall? Close. A personal injury lawyer who usually chases ambulances. They are suing you for. He put on his reading glasses and squinted at the document. Wrongful eviction, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, this is my favorite. Grandparent alienation. I snorted. Is that even a real thing? In this state? No. It is a desperate grasp for leverage. Paxson leaned back in his chair. They are demanding a settlement of $50,000 for pain and suffering, plus a full refund of the rental fees. They destroyed a $2,000 vase, Paxson, I said. And they violated the anti-discrimination clause. Precisely, Paxson smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. Which is why we are not settling. We are countersuing. He pulled out another file. I have drafted a response. We are suing for breach of contract, property damage, and defamation of character regarding the lies she posted on social media before you released the video. We are also seeking legal fees. What about the deposit? I asked. Forfeited, Paxson said. Clause 5 of the rental agreement. Any damage to property or illegal activity results in immediate forfeiture of the security deposit. Brandon was cited by the police for destruction of property. That money is yours. Do they have any money to pay a judgment? I asked. Paxson shook his head. Unlikely. My investigator found that your mother took out a high-interest personal loan to pay for the party rental. She is drowning in debt. And your brother? Mr. Henderson fired him yesterday. I blinked. Brandon got fired? Apparently, Mr. Henderson didn't appreciate his employee lying about owning a penthouse and getting arrested for throwing tantrums in a lobby. It reflects poorly on the bank. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. This was total destruction. They had lost everything. Their reputation, their money, their jobs. Morgan, Paxson said softly, seeing my expression. You didn't do this to them. They did this to themselves. You just stopped catching them when they fell. I know, I said. It is just, sad. It is necessary, Paxson corrected. If you give them an inch, they will take a mile. We need to bury them in paperwork so deep they never try to contact you again. Do it, I said, standing up. Serve the papers. We walked out of the office together. The sun was shining. The air felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what my mother would do next. I had the law, the truth, and the deed on my side. Sylvia and Brandon received the countersuit 2 days later. I heard from Aunt Linda that Sylvia fainted when she saw the amount we were suing for. They dropped their lawsuit immediately. They had no money for a legal battle they were guaranteed to lose. They were defeated. Completely and utterly. Silence. That was the first thing I noticed in the weeks following the legal smackdown. For 34 years, my life had been a cacophony of my mother's criticism and my brother's demands. Do this, buy that, look better, try harder. It was a constant background noise, like living next to a highway. And then, suddenly, the traffic stopped. We sent the official cease and desist letter. It was a simple document, really. It stated that any further contact from Sylvia or Brandon would be considered harassment and would violate the restraining order we were prepared to file. Blocking their numbers was the hardest part. Not because I wanted to talk to them, but because of the guilt. It is a heavy, sticky thing, guilt. It is programmed into us from birth. Honor your father and mother. But what if your mother dishonors you? What if she actively tries to destroy you? I sat in my kitchen, staring at the block contact button on my phone. My thumb hovered over Sylvia's name. I remembered the times she had been kind, baking cookies when I was 5, buying me a dress for prom, even if she did criticize how I looked in it. But then I remembered Sam crying in the hallway. I remembered Lily looking at her shoes, feeling unworthy. I pressed the button. Then I did the same for Brandon. It felt like exhaling a breath I had been holding for decades. I didn't hear from them directly after that. The news of their downfall trickled in through the grapevine. Aunt Linda, who had firmly switched to Team Morgan after seeing the video, kept me updated. Sylvia had to move. Without the deposit money and facing the legal fees from her failed lawsuit, she couldn't afford her condo anymore. She moved into a small, one-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Apparently, she spends her days complaining to her neighbors about her ungrateful billionaire daughter, but most people just roll their eyes and walk away. Brandon hit rock bottom. After being fired from the bank, he couldn't find another executive job. His reputation was radioactive in the city's finance sector. The last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency at the airport, washing cars. It was poetic justice. The man who refused to work hard was now scrubbing mud off tires. I didn't take joy in their suffering, but I didn't lose sleep over it either. They were living the lives they had built for themselves. And I was finally free to build mine. 6 months later. The summer sun was setting over the city, turning the glass walls of the obsidian tower into sheets of gold. But this time, the gold wasn't fake sequins or leased luxury. It was real. I was back in the penthouse. But the atmosphere couldn't have been more different from that disastrous night in the spring. The sliding glass doors to the terrace were wide open. The smell of charcoal and grilling burgers wafted through the air. There was no jazz band, just a playlist of 80s pop hits blasting from a Bluetooth speaker. Cannonball. Splash. I looked up just in time to see Sam launch himself into the infinity pool. Water sprayed everywhere, soaking the expensive limestone deck. Sam. You got me wet. Lily shrieked, laughing as she paddled on a giant inflatable flamingo. Careful, guys. Don't run on the wet tile. I called out from the grill, flipping a burger. I wasn't wearing a silk blouse today. I was wearing a sundress and flip-flops. My hair was in a ponytail. And I was surrounded by people who actually loved me. Dave, my foreman from the construction site, was sitting on the Italian leather sofa, which I had covered with a towel, drinking a beer. Aunt Linda was there, helping with the salad. Even Henry, the security guard who had defended us that night, was there with his girlfriend. I had given him a raise and an invite to the first real party at the Penthouse. This is the life, boss, Dave said, raising his bottle. You know, you could charge admission for this view. I think I have had enough of charging people, I laughed. This place is for family now. The real kind. I looked at my kids. They were glowing. Sam had forgotten the trauma of being pushed away. Lily was confident, loud, and happy. They owned this space just as much as I did. They knew they belonged. I realized then that Sylvia was wrong about everything. She thought the penthouse made you elite. She thought the address gave you value. But looking around at my dusty contractor friends and my laughing children, I knew the truth. The penthouse was just a box. It was a beautiful, expensive box, but it was empty until you filled it with the right people. Later that night, after the guests had left and the kids were asleep in the guest room, sprawled out on the king-sized bed like little starfish, I walked out onto the terrace one last time. The city lights twinkled below me. I held a glass of wine, leaning against the railing. I thought about the journey that brought me here. I thought about the years of feeling less than. The years of hiding my success because I was afraid it would intimidate my brother or make my mother jealous. I thought about the fear of being seen as a failure because I didn't fit their mold. I had spent so much time trying to buy their approval, subsidizing their lifestyle, shrinking myself to fit into their small, petty world. But you cannot buy bread from a hardware store, and you cannot get love from people who are incapable of giving it. I took a sip of wine. I was proud of myself. Not for the money. Not for the building. But for the moment I stood in that doorway and said no. For the moment I chose my children over my mother's ego. Dignity isn't about what you have. It isn't about formal wear or titles. Dignity is knowing your own worth, even when the people who are supposed to love you the most refuse to see it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my bank app, a deposit from a new client. But I didn't check it. I put the phone down and looked up at the stars. I was Morgan Vance. I was a mother. I was a builder. And for the first time in my life, I was home. Am I the jerk for publicly humiliating my mother and brother, evicting them in front of their important guests, and then suing them until they were broke? Or did they deserve every bit of it for how they treated my children? I honestly struggle with it sometimes, but then I look at my son's smile, and I think I made the right choice. Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge and justice, please hit that like button, it really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story from the subreddit. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.